Hey everyone, welcome to tonight's late night happy hour. Brian Kamenetzky, Andy Kamenetzky. Very excited tonight to go quad box. We're going quad box, people, with Anthony Irwin and Harrison Faigen. Of course, you know Anthony from the Locked On Lakers podcast, which he hosts every goddamn day.
Every day.
In and of itself, incredibly impressive. Because that's hard. It's hard to come up with something.
Let me tell you about that David Locke.
Every day.
That guy is a taskmaster.
He is.
That guy just does not let up.
He is. Yeah, I miss a single show and I get an email the next. I'm kidding. He does not send me an email. No, the tough part.
He shows up at your fucking door and he's like, "Where's my goddamn podcast?"
Holding
From
a
Utah.
2x4. It's crazy.
Even during the pandemic, he kicks the door down. He's like, "Forget social distancing. I need my Lakers content."
But he's wearing
David,
a mask. And
I
that's what
own this
matters.
door now. Like, please don't. I have to pay for this, but I'm like, dude, it costs money to replace this thing. No,
And
the
he
tough.
just throws like a handful of singles at you, like, "Get yourself a new door and give me a podcast tomorrow." Of course, editor-in-chief over there at the Silver Screen and Roll, Harrison Faigen, also joins us in the bottom right-hand corner. Jim Jackson Jarmusch Jim Jackson Bullock, not Jim Jackson Jarmusch. I was making a Hollywood Squares reference and got really confused. He's going to join us in the center square later. Wasn't worth it.
No.
Yeah, that one went over my head. I'm not gonna lie.
Dude, that one went over my
No,
head.
was it? You guys don't remember in Hollywood Squares when Jim J. Bullock but his middle name was Jackson.
Nobody ever called him Jim Jackson Bullock. That's why I got confused. I'm like, are you referring
No,
to
the whole thing, it went downhill from the
I thought,
beginning.
okay, is he referring to Jim Jarmusch, the director, Jim Jackson,
the basketball player.
That's what I was thinking.
or Jim J. Bullock? I'm like, what the fuck is he talking about?
Yep. Turns out the answer is none of them. I'm not even sure.
You realize how high a joke has to go to get over Harrison's head?
Look, I'm the youngest one here. Like Hollywood Squares is a very distant memory.
That's not what he meant, Harrison.
I know.
You know, right off
He even
the top.
added inches on top. Like as long as his head wasn't high enough as it was, he added a couple inches with the fedora.
I just saw KC 88507355. The two writers who hate Kuzma. You're gonna have to be more specific.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I feel like that is not specific enough for this 4-person quad box.
Yeah,
because like anyone could accuse any of us of hating Kuzma. If they were really a Kuzma devotee, like
who? Okay, let's start with some Kuzma hate then, as long as they don't know which one of it is which. And this is even before we get to what Kyle Kuzma was doing on Twitter today. Are there still Kyle Kuzma devotees at this point, though? Like, who are those people?
It's all the just asking questions crowd, right? Like that's.
Look, Kyle
He's
Kuzma,
big among the flat earthers.
He could still be a 25-point-a-game scorer, right? I mean, I'm just asking questions. Like,
well, I mean, look, the Lakers are certainly hoping that there are some devotees out there because whether you still think Kuzma's best years are ahead of him, whether you think there's still a level or two he can reach, that sort of thing, his fit on this team and his future on this team is limited just because there's only so high you can go when you arguably play the same position as two of the 5 best players in the league who happen to be on your team.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think the interesting thing about the Kuzma discourse is that because he is scoring less, he's become universally more like there are more people saying that you're hating on Kuzma or whatever. Like if you point out that he's not efficient, and there are like a lot of kind of more fair weather fans or, you know, like that are upset and think that he kind of stagnated this year when really like this version of Kuzma that played this year, especially in the bubble, is a better NBA basketball player than the version of Kuzma in his first 2 seasons. But like, because he's not scoring as much, like he's not seen as valuable. And it may have, ironically, like by fitting in, he may have tanked his stock and like what kind of value he could be to the Lakers in a trade of some sort. And so like, it's this kind of weird, like multi-pronged problem that they're dealing with because of this.
did he, because you're right, Harrison, he showed he was a better basketball player. Did
I don't know about that actually.
Well, in theory, he showed he will try to play defense. He will pass the ball.
I think he showed he could be a different basketball player, but
I think he showed he's an older basketball player.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if he showed he was like the defensive improvement that he had this season, particularly in the playoffs, was real. And I think it helped the Lakers, but it also seemed to come in some ways at the expense of his offense. But his offensive numbers this year, whether eye test, analytics, counting stats, they're all like career lows. Like he regressed offensively.
It wasn't good.
So, I mean, it's hard to say Anthony, what do you think in terms of where he's at right now?
I think it's tough with Kuzma because playoff Rondo was this kind of phenomenon, right? That we all marveled at as it was happening. But every time Kuzma shared the court with Rondo, his stats went through the basement, right? And I think that has a lot to do with the way that Rondo prefers to play. He wants a structured offense. He wants option 1, then option 2, then option 3, and Kuzma prefers to cut to the basket and do those kinds of things. And I think when you try to ad lib like that, and Rondo isn't looking for you, those techniques, those moves just kind of go wasted. And when it wasn't Rondo out there, when he's playing with LeBron, when he's playing with AD, and there's space for him to be able to do those things, he looks significantly better. Shocking, I know that playing alongside LeBron James and Anthony Davis would make you look better. but I think there was the report earlier that he wants
sizable
a sizable extension. So do I, David, if you're listening. And
it's my favorite headline ever in sports. Like, this guy would like more money.
Yeah,
like a lot more if you're willing to give it to me.
Like, same.
Well, and I think for young
Stars,
players,
they're just like us.
They tend to think that like the way to get there is through these counting stats. And I think one of the things that was really valuable was Jared Dudley telling him, no, you can get sustainable money playing like Danny Green and just being a really important player who spaces the floor and plays defense. And you can get money that extends well beyond your usefulness. And I think Kuzma still wants to see if he can get money the other way, where he has a much higher usage rate, where he goes to a team like New York or some crappy team out there where he can just get as many shots up as he wants and puts all kinds of counting numbers in the books and gets paid that way. I just don't think it's very smart. I don't think he's that kind of player.
The other dream we all have is to be paid well beyond our usefulness.
No, my biggest
achieve that
on this planet. My biggest dream on this planet is to be one of the equivalent of one of those guys in the NBA who gets paid to not be around the team, or just gets paid to go away. Like, that's when you've really made it. When you
want to be Luol Deng, is what you're saying.
Yes. Oh my God.
Who wouldn't want to be Luol Deng?
That is the American dream, honestly. Is to get paid that much money and then have them be like, well, actually, if you want to just sit this one out, that's fine.
How about this? Getting paid that much money, but in installments to go away. Like, we're really going to keep you away. It's not even just 1 year. Like, we will make sure you are set for the next 2 to 3 years.
He was like their 4th highest paid player last year.
He was the 5th highest paid player on the team.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's funny every time I say it.
That is my life goal.
I think in a perfect world, you would choose to be somebody who'd be like, wow, he's paid a ton, but he really went out there and earned it. But in lieu of that, if your other option is I do not understand what the hell they were thinking when they gave the Kamenetzky brothers $78 million. I don't know why, but they're gone now, thank God. But they still have $78 million. That's not a bad deal for us.
Okay. Ahmed Yusuf 18 says, guys, I gotta disagree. I think I'd rather be LeBron. Well,
much work. Way too much work.
We're talking about the sport. None of us are the LeBron of podcasting right here.
I'm not trying to carry anybody.
Anthony's like, no, really, I want to get paid a lot of money, then get told, do nothing, just collect the checks. It's this regrettable decision by this company. Just go away, take the money.
And he podcasts like it.
I think
trying to make it happen.
The biggest turning point in this country is when people decided that being famous was better than being rich. If you could only choose, I need to be famous. I need people to see me. No, pay me to go away. That's fine.
Yeah, that'd be great. I moved to Texas. I moved away from LA, but there was like Chase Daniels, right? Is the NFL quarterback who's been a lifetime backup. He's made $47 million. I think he's started 5 games. Sign me up for that.
He's going to be able to jog with his kid, his grandchildren, his great grandchildren. He can run around with them. 47 million.
He's going to be able to teach
Harrison,
a college course.
Jaded.
Like
what?
He's going to be able to teach a college course on whatever like his chosen profession is. Like
exactly. Yeah. I mean, are we so jaded now, Harrison, where we look at professional athletes and we say, 47 million. It's not like he made that much money. Like I remember looking at Shannon Brown's contract one year and being like, well, he only makes 3 million. And it occurred to me like it takes a normal person 45 years to make $3 million.
Yeah.
And I just did that.
Chase Daniel,
we
he
all
actually looked upset that he got into the game the other night. He's like, this, what the hell? He's healthy. He's fine. Just rub some dirt on it. I want to get back to carrying this clipboard.
No, to some degree, that's professional sports, right? Like we all do that with the veterans minimum guys. They're like, oh, he's on a cheap $2 million contract. Like, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that cheap by NBA player standards, I guess.
Yep.
But yeah.
Yeah.
How much would it cost to make you to get paid to go away, Anthony?
Can we start a GoFundMe?
We're gonna find out. I was gonna say we're gonna find out by the end of the show, I'm sure. No, I think just pay my mortgage. Let me just live my quiet little life out here. That'd be great. That'd be fantastic. I wouldn't get death threats on Reddit. That'd be fantastic. That's the ideal thing here.
So back to this. Do you guys think there's a chance? The only real trade package the Lakers have to offer is the contract, essentially the contract of Danny Green, flotsam and jetsam if people opt in, opt out, or whatever. And then Kyle Kuzma. Kuz is the thing that the Lakers have to offer somebody that can swing a trade. And we can start talking about some of the names. Like, is Kyle Kuzma enough to get something from someone that you would want?
I don't know. The Spurs are an interesting test case for this in a couple different ways because, number one, it's like we're talking about Kuzma not really fitting in and kind of having an awkward fit. It's like, okay, but they're going to trade him for a guy who has arguably like a way more awkward fit that is making the type of money that Kyle Kuzma probably wants to make on his sizable contract extension and DeMar DeRozan and like the rumors that they've been connected to over the last day or so. But like the Spurs are an interesting team for this because they might be one of the teams that actually does still value Kuzma. Popovich hasn't been shy about how much he enjoyed having him around Team USA, how valuable he thought he would have been had he not gotten hurt during last summer's World Cup or basketball international basketball competition. Yeah, of some type. And like the Spurs, like Kuzma, going back to his draft, like that came out. His trainer said they were going to draft him if the Lakers hadn't taken him. Like Kuz last summer called Pop his favorite coach of all time, which is just like a hilarious shade at Luke Walton aside. Clearly enjoyed his time for Greg Popovich in the Team USA camp. The Spurs obviously still probably love Danny Green. Like they didn't trade him because they were looking to get rid of him. It was to make the whole Kawhi thing work. And so like that is theoretically a team where you'd say they may value these guys as pieces. What can you get from them? And then you look and it's like, oh, it's DeMar DeRozan. Well, all right. I guess what else can we get?
Yeah, DeMar DeRozan is a good player.
Yes.
And he's somebody that could provide some utility for the Lakers that I think they could use. This team did not have a lot of guys that can create their own shot. And as much as, DeMar DeRozan doesn't space the floor at all, and in certain ways, he is an anti-analytics player, depending on how much that actually matters to you. And he's not, he is not much help defensively. He's actually an underrated distributor. He's actually a much better passer and playmaker than I think people are aware. And he can get his own shot. He can take some lifting off LeBron and Anthony Davis just by being able to get stuff without help. So, I could see some value with DeRozan being there, especially it's a 1-year deal. So you're basically just thinking, could his presence elevate you more to try to go back to back than Danny Green and Kyle Kuzma? That's really the question.
The concern that I have is that it would be such an obvious detachment from the identity that the Lakers had this year that won them the championship. right? Basically, what the Lakers were all right, LeBron, you're in charge of the offense. Anthony Davis, you're also in charge of some, especially come postseason time, right? Where he was creating a lot of shots for himself. You're also in charge of the offense. All of your other role players who are not named LeBron and not named Anthony Davis, you guys are in charge of defense. You guys have to defend your butts off. You have to be, to be able to switch. You have to be physical. You have to rotate out to shooters, and everybody bought in. And there were times where the defense looked legitimately suffocating, and that allowed them to get out in transition where they were the most efficient team in the NBA. And like when I look at DeMar DeRozan, he doesn't space the floor for Anthony. He's going to make the game more difficult. Yeah, he's going to make it more difficult for Anthony Davis. He's going to make it more difficult for LeBron James when he's on the court with those guys. And on top of that, he's not really going to defend. So you're also not really going to get out in transition.
Well, he'll defend more. He will defend more on this team, like, you know, and surrounded by better players and so on and so on.
He was in San Antonio, though. Like, if there's a place that's going to like get you to buy into the culture, it would be that. It's not even just
buy-in. It's who's around you. You have better players. Like, you know, you defend better because Anthony Davis is on your team. You defend better because LeBron, when he's dialed in, is on your team. I sometimes I think about DeRozan a little bit like I think about Kuzma. Like, I am not a Kuz guy. I never have been. I think he works hard. I don't, as much as like, the Twitter shit today and the outfits and whatever, I do think he's very interested in being very good at basketball.
He just has a lot of questions too.
Like, yes.
Oh man.
You know what? Who among us, Harrison, hasn't just sat back in our mid-20s and asked a lot of questions?
Yeah, sometimes I just like when I'm looking for answers to questions on like mask usage and whether or not lockdowns work, my first thing is I just tweet and I'm like, hey guys, like, what do you think? And usually I find that my followers give me the best like sources of information.
I'm just crowdsourcing to 1.5 million followers. What do y'all think of shutting down for 2 to 4 weeks?
Yeah.
But
I don't know. But Europe, guys, Europe.
I respect the audacity of him to just log on and he's like, what's going to really get people together is if we just have a discussion on the internet with my 1.5 million followers. I'm just going to bring everyone in and like we're going to reach a consensus, just all of us. Like I respect the effort and like the idea.
What's funny about it is it starts out with the, are you guys all, you guys, the whole Twitter gang, are you guys okay with, shutting down for 2 to 4 weeks? Then he adds, are you okay with shutting down if there's no stimulus? And then he keeps just sort of asking more questions, where it's very clear Kyle Kuzma has some reservations about the potential of a second shutdown. I think that's becoming more clear the more questions that he's asking. This is something that Kuzma seems to be against. And what's interesting about it is there are questions you could ask about that. Like in terms of, do you think economically we're going to be okay from another round of this? People in middle or lower income brackets, are they potentially going to have jobs to come back to? Like, are they going to be able to get through this if there is no, like, there are questions that you can ask in earnest.
Nobody thinks this is like good. Like this is a fun idea.
But what you don't do, I think, for something like this, particularly with 1.5 million followers, is just float stuff. Like it's not really a great forum.
What do you guys think of this idea?
Did you guys stick around for the part where he was just asking about tort reform? Because I thought that was actually much more compelling and nuanced.
I enjoyed it when he was like, look, guys, I could be like other celebrities and not interact with you guys. Like, actually, in this case, that'd be fantastic. That'd be great.
It is the kind of, it is Jen, whatever, everything has to be on social media. One of those moments that we all go through in our 20s when we think we are way smarter than we actually are.
No, it's like Kuzma, to be fair, he's actually a smart guy. He's actually a smart kid.
I'm not saying he's not smart. Generally speaking, you have to be smart to think you're smarter than you are. I don't think he fully knows what it is in this particular case that he's talking about. And like the implications
I would just like to know, like,
about with masking and all these other things. He's just asking questions.
I just like to know what his point was beyond just asking questions, right? Like it felt like today, all of the NBA players got their revenue sheet. They got the revenue memo and they're like, oh, that's going to be the split. Hey, what if we actually tried out this Golden State thing? What's going on there? They can try that out. They can try to get fans in seats.
Oh, a lockdown means no fans? All right, well, maybe this doesn't sound like that good of an idea, guys. I don't know.
Yeah,
it wasn't a good idea. But the point that I was going to be making before is, in a lot of ways, for me, even as somebody who isn't I'm not a huge fan of Kuzma in the sense of like, does he have star potential? I think the answer is no. And I think the problem with trading him is, if you trade, the only teams where Kuz can go and really do the things that showcase the scoring, and this is on another really bad team like he was on with the Lakers before. And so by the time you get to a place where the team is good, if Kuz is your first or second best player, you're going to be a terrible team. And then by the third or fourth best player, you run into the same problems that he has here, where does he fit with the guys that are better than him? That's my reservation if I'm another team taking him. But like, you can overdo that to the point where you start saying that Kyle Kuzma isn't good at, like, he's just not good. And DeRozan, who is obviously a better, more established player, I think suffers from a little bit of that, where you start, well, he doesn't shoot threes, and he did, like, to the point where you can forget that he is really good. It's just a question of whether or not he'd be really good here.
It's a matter of like impact, though. Like, somebody can be really talented and not have a positive impact on the basketball around him. That's the concern with DeMar DeRozan. That's followed him his entire career.
It feels like almost a higher class version of the Kuzma problem. Like, what was Kuzma's biggest issue? It was that, like, he couldn't play this wasn't his biggest issue, but one of the issues was that it was hard for him to get minutes because either LeBron or AD, like, were playing the floor, or were playing the four for a good amount of the season. And like with San Antonio last year, they had to move DeMar to the four, basically, to get enough spacing on the floor to run effective offense. And that was great for him. But I just wonder, like, can he continue that kind of resurgence? Like, if he's not playing in some small, like, kind of souped up small ball lineup? And I don't think that the Lakers are necessarily a fit for that. It's not that I don't think that there's a situation where he can contribute to winning basketball. I'm just not sure that it's here.
Yeah, I with Kuzma also, like, I in terms of what his best potential would be, and like I said earlier, I don't actually think it's with the Lakers. Just beyond any shortcomings you think he may have as a player, or the things that still need working on, the things that haven't improved. I just think there is a logjam positionally in terms of where he would fit on this team, that he's never going to be better than LeBron or Anthony Davis. So, I mean, there's a ceiling for him on this team. What I think would be most interesting would be, how does he fit on a championship level, or, maybe even a tier below team that's more guard heavy? Like, if you put him on Portland, for example, where they could, Golden State, like, where would he fit in somewhere like that? Like, I think that's ultimately the test for Kuzma in terms of what his potential actually is for a winning team. Like, he needs a roster construction that's basically the exact opposite of this one. Like, in fairness to Kuzma, like, it reminds me a little bit of when Jordan Farmar, his first stint with the Lakers during the 09 and 10 teams that went back to back. Like, Jordan was unhappy with his role, and I wrote a piece about this and talked with him about it for a while. And as much as I thought Jordan, and again, I wrote this, overrated his ability.
Well, I'll be right back. You guys carry on.
And I think Jordan thought he was better than he actually was. He actually was correct that the triangle did not play to his strengths. And as long as he was on this team, he was only going to develop so much as a player and progress so much as a player, just because he really wasn't built for the triangle in the first place. So, I thought that he was both a little bit delusional in terms of what he thought he could be with the Lakers, but also correct that he was in the wrong system. So I think Kuzma probably needs a change of scenery just to actually discover the best version of himself.
But it isn't the best. So it kind of goes back to and by the way, if you guys had over under 25 minutes before Harrison and I get one of the Kamenetzky brothers to leave their own show, 25 minutes.
Kids,
well done.
My kids wandered downstairs.
Well done.
And also too, I've heard the Farmar story, so it was a good time for me to get up. Both kids came downstairs.
for Kuzma though,
Have they heard the Farmar story though? I tell them Uncle Andy has a story.
Kids gather round. Uncle Andy has a story of Jordan Farmar.
He's got to tell you guys about Jordan Farmar again, okay? The tale of Jordan Farmar.
Jesus, Andy with that fucking story again.
Oh, they have not heard it, and they would be riveted. I guarantee.
So
It'd be something.
what do you guys think Jordan Farmar's favorite dating app is?
Well, I
Farmers only.
Farmers only. There you go. Yeah.
How long have you had that one? In your
I know I'm going to get him.
Yeah, I thought about it a little.
Good night, everyone.
But like, so to like the Kuzma thing is interesting because like the best version of Kuzma, I would actually argue, is on this team. Like is actually just as a 3-and-D specialist kind of player. Now, he might not think that that's his optimal situation, but outside of maybe 5 guys at his position, for the most part, where you're going to be your most efficient, your most effective type player as a small forward is focusing on defense and shooting 3-pointers. And he could go to another team and he can handle the ball more and he can try to do all kinds of, he's not that kind of player, but he could try it and see how it goes. And frankly, like, I wouldn't blame him for trying to do that, right? Because if you find out that you actually are that kind of player, there's a lot of money to be made that way. I don't think that's the way he is. And I've thought from the beginning of this offseason that if the Lakers were to make a trade to send Kuzma to some other team where he would have a larger role, it's not like he would demand it. I don't think it's going to get there. But like, would he be okay with it? Absolutely. He wants to test those waters. But I think what he'll find after a few years playing on bad teams, getting up at any number of shots that he wants, is that the most sustainable kind of career path for him is going to be a 3-and-D small forward where you can be switchable on defense and just help teams win.
He's got to improve the 3 part, though.
Yeah,
I mean, the 3
and the
right
D.
now.
I mean, I don't think it's fair to call him he's got the D part of the 3-and-D now.
Well, but the defense though was better this year.
It was much better.
He showed flashes, especially against smaller guards. That I didn't think he had in his repertoire at all. I didn't think he had that at all.
No. I mean, to be fair to Kuzma, he really during the playoffs he had some games where his defense was terrific and better than we'd ever seen before.
Yeah,
it is amazing how, like, on a team like this, so many conversations become about him, and it's because, you know, the role that he was expected to play coming into the season that we all thought was really necessary. Maybe not everybody. I think most people thought he'd need to be LeBron said he'd need to be the 3rd best player on the team for them to win a title, you know, going into the bubble. And like the reality of what these Lakers was so different. And the reality of what Kuzma was as a contributing player was so different that it both proved his value and proved how expendable he is at the same time. And I find that fascinating.
Mm-hmm. That's how winning basketball sometimes goes, though, right? Like the Kings, Dan Le Batard uses this example all the time with the Sacramento Kings, where they started with the team that almost knocked off the Lakers. And then like Peja Stojakovic was asked to play a bigger role, and Hedo Turkoglu was asked to play a bigger role. And as they filled that role to a certain extent, they were never quite as good as when it was Mike Bibby and it was Chris Webber and it was Peja and it was Hedo, who was just asked to do like the stuff on the peripheries. And like Kuzma, maybe there's a situation here where he expands his role to be able to do a lot of the things that he thinks he can maybe do, but it's not ever going to be on as good a team as he just played with.
Mm-hmm. What do you want? It's just, it really comes down to what do you want? And, you know, I mean, he's going to make a lot of money anyway, but he is not somebody like, how much money does Kyle Kuzma get? If the Lakers keep him, it's probably a lower number. Although I guess with their cap situation,
I just saw Harrison's face, and it reminded me of the piece that you had written about today, referencing John Hollinger's estimates for a bunch of guys extension eligible, including Kuzma.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, is he going to get a lot of money? Because I know both of your
I
colleagues,
mean a lot of money by what we were talking about before, like
yeah, I guess by
by Shannon Brown made $3 million, and we were
Oh.
like, two things happened that year when Shannon Brown got paid. I learned that I officially had become a member of the sports media who had no concept of what real money is anymore. Also, I learned that the Lakers were paying attention because they got rid of the carving station that year. And so it was either you paid Shannon Brown or the media got to eat fresh roast beef. And I personally would have kept the roast beef, but nobody asked me.
Yeah, somebody like in the budgeting department, like in the marketing department, is like, well, we got to cut costs somewhere, like to afford to keep Shannon Brown around and pay these luxury taxes. It's like, well,
no more
roast beef for the
turkey for the
Kamenetzky
media
brothers
anymore.
You know what though, and Brian will attest to this. As cheap as Donald Sterling was as an owner with payroll, he seemed at times to be putting that money towards media, because the media dining in the Clippers during those years where the Lakers, were signing guys like Shannon Brown, Clippers media dining smoked what the Lakers.
The food was the same. What they had were extra snacks.
No, but they had extra. No, but they also, Andy, I remember more carving station.
You're misremembering. Often the food for the Clippers games was worse. But what they did was they had a wider variety of snacks available at halftime, where you had pretzels and chips and the little party mix and all kinds of stuff.
See, what you're describing is exactly why, like, Sterling was not spending a ton on you guys. It was just cheaper to please you guys than to please the players. So, like, he's like, well, let's see if maybe some people at least write favorable stuff if I give them like some extra bags of pretzels or whatever. But like,
much.
Decent attempt.
It would have worked on Anthony, but like to the point on
whiskey on there, Kuzma, I'm great. I wouldn't say anything.
To the point on Kuzma, like, I mean, you're
racist. Like, I don't know what you're talking about.
He's a great guy.
He seems like a great guy to me.
He has mixers over here.
Oh,
they have an old-fashioned station. I didn't realize he was old-fashioned.
Yeah, just nobody noticed because he was handing out free beers at halftime and whatever. Like,
sure, he says really racially uncomfortable things about his players, but the ice cream station stays open all the way through.
Oh my God!
Yeah, no, you're right. But that's another thing that he did is
he has no chill except for there.
You guys are gonna get me fired.
Oh, Harrison, you do this for free.
Yeah, that's probably true. Honestly, I don't know what else I would.
If you love what you're doing, it's not work.
I don't know that I love it then. But Kuzma is like Hollinger projected him to get like $6 million, and like I think that's probably underrating. Like
$6 million? No.
Yes.
No.
American?
Yeah, $6 million.
Yeah.
That's
the same thing.
Yeah, I mean that's it. I don't think that like I don't think he'd ever agree to $6 million, but like I don't think that that's that wild of like a prediction of like what he's actually kind of worth in this role. But like he's probably asking for something closer to 8 figures, and so like that is going to make this like that's why I don't think that these extension talks are going to get done. Which is why you are hearing all this noise about the Lakers are taking calls on him, because it's like, well, you got to see kind of what you can get for him now, even though you could keep him in restricted free agency. Then he's a little harder to trade because, like, he's more expensive at that point.
It's the equivalent, but like this is Andy and I remember having this conversation a million times. Like the Lakers, regardless of what you think about the Dwight Howard deal, nobody wanted to have to be the guy who had to figure out, do I sign Andrew Bynum to a contract extension? Like that is not nothing good comes out of that. And the Lakers recognized it and made the move. But I mean, it's not that, because Kuz is going to be a much more dependable and healthy player than Bynum. But if you're the team that acquires him, so if he's worth $6 million to the Lakers and you trade him for some stuff and you give him a bigger scoring role, he's still not going to be worth 15 or 20 to you. Even though that he probably thinks of himself in that 12 to 15, 12 to 18 range.
I think probably higher, like based on like this reporting of like I think sizable. We're clearing 12 million at that point. Yeah, like
his outfits would scream $18 million alone.
Am I an $18 million a year player? I'm just asking questions.
Dress for the extension you want.
Just asking. It's it's fair to ask.
I'm just look, guys.
Poor
Yeah,
guy.
How much do you
Because
guys
really,
think I'm worth?
it's
And then
not
just
fair,
quote
because I
tweeting
really
all
do.
the highest bids.
Yeah. He's going to put out a poll. What do you think I'm worth? Oh my God. I will follow you if you select D max.
What do you guys think I'm worth? 18 million, 17 million, 19 million, or 20 million a year? Like, and then when 17 million wins, he just goes to the Lakers and he's like, hey, like, I mean, the fans are saying.
Right. Sources.
Should LeBron take a pay cut so I can get more? Is what I'm asking.
I'm just asking questions. That's all. Just asking questions.
I do feel bad because it's like, I don't think I think he cares. Like, he's not just, he's not said Ceballos. It's like the guy does want to be good. It's just,
But I mean, but ultimately though, all of this really matters so much. And we're talking about it so much because he is on paper the best opportunity the Lakers have to try to create some type of deal. He's the sweetener, like, unless you're going to throw in Alex Caruso or something like that. I mean, I don't see
the 28 pick, maybe, but probably not. Like,
no, I mean, look, but honestly, the 28th, but also the 28th pick, if you were lucky, that guy turns into Kyle Kuzma.
Like, almost literally, because he was the 27th pick,
yes.
I think.
Yeah. I mean, like, look, wherever Kuzma's career goes, I mean, we can agree he's going to be in the league another 5 to 10 years minimum. That is a knock it out of the park for the 27th pick. Like, most 27th picks are not going to have the career Kuzma's going to have. So, I mean, it's a credit to the Lakers and their scouting department and, really earmarking him. But the odds of finding a guy like Kuzma at 28 are really low. So again, unless the Lakers are going to include Caruso or somebody really loved, the 9 minutes they saw of Talen Horton-Tucker, it's Kuzma. Like, Kuzma's ultimately what would get the Lakers some type of impact deal, like him with Danny Green and, I don't know, maybe Quinn Cook thrown in to balance some numbers, but it's Kuzma. So, I mean, this is a really important detail and something for the Lakers to learn. Like, it actually really matters.
What the Lakers need to do is approach Tillman Fertitta and say, hey, that kind of chubby guy who is an analytics darling, just give us your version of that, who happens to be James Harden. We'll give you
highest net rating of any Laker in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Oof,
no,
man, that team's falling apart.
I would prefer, I think the other thing that I don't think has been brought up nearly often enough is the kind of role that both Green and Kuzma played, right? So if you trade for DeMar DeRozan, for example, or even Chris Paul or Dennis Schroeder is a little bit, I'm more okay with Schroeder because it would take less to get him. Oladipo is, I don't really want to touch Oladipo, but like if it is DeRozan, for example, you're sending away Kuzma, who is the only non-LeBron 6'8"-ish type defender on your roster. And you look at the kind of players that you're going to be going up against in the playoffs, right? It's going to be Kawhi. It's going to be Giannis. It's going to be Durant, maybe in the finals as well. And you need somebody that you can throw there and those guys actually know they're there. Whereas if it's KCP, like we saw what that looked like when he was trying to guard Kawhi, and it felt like Kawhi was bullying him. I felt bad for KCP because Kawhi is just too big, too strong, and didn't really know that he was there. So if you do move a Kuzma, if you do, and let alone if you move Green along with Kuzma, the Lakers have to go out and replace that 6'8", 6'9"-ish type defender that they would be losing there.
Yeah, you go after like a Mo Harkless, someone like that.
Yeah, Jeff Green, I think, is going to be available. He's always available. He's always like a call away.
He is.
Yeah,
I'm convinced Jeff Green plays for 36 teams a year. Like, just it. Like,
has he played for every NBA team at this point? Like, I mean, not the Lakers, I guess, but like, I feel like we're getting close.
He's
to every
3 teams
NBA
away
team.
from a free latte. Actually.
Yeah,
because I don't know how you guys feel, but I am an advocate generally of not running it back exactly the same. You can never bring it back completely. It's hard, especially now, to bring it back exactly the same as when you have a championship team. But adding something different, changing something in your arrangement, I think is healthy for a team that's trying to go back to back. I don't know what though the right changes are to this team, because you're right, Anthony. Like the pieces fit together in a pretty specific way last year, and none of them seem irreplaceable. But at the same time, you do need to replace guys if you go in another direction. I mean, like it seems like, Dwight, for example, is somebody who seems, I think, fairly likely to leave. And you don't necessarily, they showed the playoffs, you don't necessarily need Dwight to play big minutes to win, but you do if you kind of want to preserve AD throughout the season and all this stuff, more even this year than last. You do need to replace it with something. And so what is that thing? And, how big of a style change, Harrison, do you think you want to have to promote, because your roster is just a little bit, it's a lot of subtle questions I think they have to figure out going into the year.
Yeah, I mean, you're obviously not going to, if Dwight leaves, you're not going to get the exact same player back, because that's just not how it works. Like guys that play as well as Dwight played, and look, like we can all say he's replaceable, and I think he is, but like there were 2 playoff series there where he was like really, really valuable for the team in the role that he was able to bring, and like that for the minimum, like that's a really good guy to have.
Oh, for sure.
I think that, and I'm not saying that you're not saying that. Like I'm just saying, I think you can still replace him though by maybe doubling down on like trying to find some overlapping skills, even if it's not the exact same player. Like a guy like Tristan Thompson that might be available for cheap, or Serge Ibaka if he wants to come to a place that like where he can try and win. Like those guys can bring some of those skills, and maybe Nerlens some other ones. Yeah, Nerlens Noel. Like there are plenty of guys that can bring some of the stuff Dwight brought, and then maybe the talent of LeBron and AD allow kind of the benefits that they have to shine more and the drawbacks that they have versus someone like Dwight to kind of be exposed less.
Are we positive JaVale isn't opting in?
No, I feel like that's a guarantee that he's opting in. Like, why would?
Yeah,
I have genuinely no idea why he wouldn't opt in.
I think he's opting in. I'd be very the Avery Bradley news. That he just switched agents and that he's debating opting out, or at least mulling it over. I would be really surprised if he opts out. He must know something the rest of us.
Well, Harrison, you had an interesting spin on that you wrote about at Silver Screen.
I appreciate you reading that. I have a theory on this.
I was told about it. I didn't actually read it.
I told him about it. I read it, Harrison.
I don't believe you for a second, because I'm not convinced you can read. My theory on this
was coming.
is that Avery Bradley, like, I don't think that you change agents and like publicly tell Shams. This is not an anonymous source like thing. This is Bradley told me that he's considering opting out. Like that is a very public shot across the bow of the Lakers. Like, hey, like if you're thinking I'm just going to opt in so that you can use me as salary ballast in some deal, like you are sadly mistaken and I will leave. And I think that he is basically trying to get some kind of guarantee that he's not going to have to move his family in the middle of a pandemic, uproot himself, and not have to come back if he just opts into this year.
I mean, okay, but they just won a championship without him. So,
well, plus also, I mean, can you really make that type of guarantee to? And I don't mean this. I don't mean this to sound like a jerk. And I really like Avery Bradley, but like, can you really make that type of guarantee to Avery Bradley? Like,
I mean, probably not, which may be why he's doing this now and mulling over opting out, because it's like, do I really want to opt back in and then potentially end up in Oklahoma City or, wherever it may be?
I mean, JaVale knows that too.
Yeah. I think JaVale just knows that he's not going to get anywhere close to what he's getting on the open market. And so for him, it's like, all right, if I have to go live in Oklahoma City for a year,
I don't know if Avery Bradley's going to get more than he's already making. Like, I don't pick, unless he just wants, an extra couple years tacked on with a new contract.
Bradley won't either, but I think he'll get closer than JaVale would.
Yeah. JaVale would lose money, I think, if he opted out.
There was also that kind of weird report where he wasn't sure that he would take the ring if the Lakers offered it to him before they went into remember before they went into the bubble.
That wasn't a report. He said that he didn't know what he would do. And like, I mean, they're planning to offer him, but I mean, he may not feel like he earned it. Like, who knows? Like, I don't want to speak for him, but like, there's probably a lot of reasons why you would consider not accepting that. Like,
well, I just bring that up because like, I just think it's really tough to find out, that you're kind of sort of replaceable. Right? Like if the very notion that the Lakers could go out and win a championship without him got him to the point where he was like, I'm not sure I would take that ring. And then they do go out and win a championship without him. And now he's saying, And the thinking there is like, well, we saw what Rondo was able to do, so I'm sure they're going to carve out a similar role for him. Alex Caruso is going to he wouldn't demand a larger role, but I think he should have one than he had last year. And KCP went out and showed that, and I think you can make an argument in terms of free agents right now at his position. He's probably the most highly touted positional shooting guard on free agency right now. And
that's probably true.
And Avery
for
Bradley's
the first time since the Lakers gave him $20 million.
Yeah, I remember that. I was bouncing up down the halls in Las Vegas when that actually happened. But with Bradley, I'm sure he's probably looking at the situation and he's saying, "Man, they really did it."
I'm looking,
and
at
I
this
kind
right
of
now.
wonder what's going on.
Anthony, I'm looking right now at a list of free agents and projected salaries from Bobby Marks at ESPN, and DeMar DeRozan, if he opted out or whatever, Evan Fournier, but like as far as just free agents that we know are going to be out there that aren't restricted, Joe Harris would be ahead of KCP, but then I think KCP actually would be the best shooting guard on the market that would be gettable. Like, Bogdan Bogdanovic is a weird one when you're restricted. Like that, that's a sort of a different animal altogether. But
is Harris not restricted? I thought he was.
I know he's not restricted.
Oh, okay. All right. That's interesting.
You don't put restrictions on Joe Harris.
Nobody boxes in.
You could try.
Nobody puts Harris in a corner.
I mean, Avery Bradley could be just wondering what his role is on this team moving forward, and like, okay, am I signing up for a reduced role that's going to hurt me even more on the open market the following year? I don't know.
Here's the thing, but these are human beings, but it's. What does he think his value is around the league? I mean,
well, he changed agents, so Bradley maybe he didn't like what he was hearing.
The analytics on Bradley last year aren't good.
Yeah,
but you could just sort of see the tangible, and they fit very well with the culture. And I mean, he was great, and he's a phenomenal guy. But like the analytics on him weren't that good, and he's coming off some of the worst, like 3 or 4 seasons of some of the worst numbers an NBA player can have and still be in the NBA. And so I wonder what he thinks his value is around the league. I mean, that's why you pay an agent, but
sometimes changing agents can indicate that you don't necessarily agree with what you're hearing from your current agent about what your value is around the league. The other thing, like before this, like Bradley made these comments to Shams, like the human factor that I was thinking about with him was like the reason he opted out of the bubble was because he was worried about his like young son who had had respiratory issues in the past, and like, obviously did not want him to contract coronavirus and test that. Like, now they're during a giant nationwide case spike, they're going to be playing this season not in a bubble. Like, I was curious if he was even going to play. And so, like, I mean, that probably doesn't factor into the opt-in or opt-out decision very much, if anything, because that's like a whole separate probably negotiation of like,
I think you opt in and then just say like, I'm not comfortable playing here.
Yeah, exactly. So like, I wouldn't know exactly how that works, but that's another thing to keep in mind is on the human factor side of things is like, ostensibly that was the reason why he skipped the bubble. And I don't know. I mean, obviously, so I don't know how all of you felt about the bubble going in. I had my doubts about whether or not it would work, and I was a little nervous about it. So I was like, I don't blame him for feeling worried about this. Obviously, that looks unfounded now,
right?
But this, given what we know now, several months later, this looks way less safe than, what we know the bubble ultimately ended up being.
You're right. I mean, I wonder if there was a point, we haven't had a chance to talk to Avery about it, but where him or other, like, where you go, like, it turns out it could have been safe. Like, I wouldn't have been bringing anything home to my family. Like, is it a month in where you go, I kind of wish I was there? I don't know. I mean, and you have to respect the decision like that you make to protect your family. But I do wonder if there was a point where there was some regret.
Well, yeah, I know the social issues also played a role in it as well. That he was very conscious of whether or not it was going to be a distraction from the Black Lives Matter movement and all of that stuff. And I think, frankly, I'm not the kind of person who should speak on whether or not he was right. I think there's very viable reasons as to like why he might have been right to sit out in that spot.
It's neither a criticism nor a second guessing.
Yeah,
I just think it's human nature to wonder when you see, to Harrison's point, how secure and well it worked, and there wasn't a single positive test.
Yeah, it really then just turns into a decision of, am I cool with being away from my family that
Correct.
long? Because even knowing how safe the bubble was, he may have still felt uncomfortable bringing his son with the respiratory issues into the bubble.
For sure.
And also too, I mean, as LeBron talked about and explaining why he didn't bring his kids there when his wife ended up joining him, there's really nothing to do there. And, your kids are going to get bored pretty easily, I guess, unless they're just so little that they don't really even understand anything going on. But I think once you're even like 5 or 6, like that, it sounded like that setup could be super
there's
boring.
Nothing for any of them. And then you have to, like, they're kids that are, they're not in school, I guess, because, it's summertime, but it's boring as hell. But like these actually, like, it's kind of a decent seg though into, because it's not going to be a bubble, but it's not going to be normal either. What do you think this season is going to look like? I mean, Anthony, like in terms of structure, in terms of scheduling, in terms of travel, what do you think they're ultimately going to do?
Man, I have no idea. It's crazy to look back
Harrison.
on. Harrison.
Good talk, Anthony.
He has a good. Well, I mean, I think there's value in being able to say that I have no idea, right? Like, I wish that was the response to a lot more people. I think a lot more people would get themselves, stop themselves from getting in trouble if they just said, like, I don't know. But like,
Anthony, just ask some questions. You're just asking questions.
I'm just asking questions. Like, what's it going to look like? But remember when the bubble was getting ready to tip off, right? When we were heading into the bubble, when we first heard about the bubble as an idea, the NBA canceled its season or postponed its season because of one test, right? Rudy Gobert gets a positive test and everything just hits a screeching halt. We passed 150,000 tests today or yesterday, whenever people are listening to this. And like, I don't know what it's going to look like.
Just for the record, so you're aware, people are watching and listening in this very second, right now.
I'm used to saying it because with my show, like, I have to like plan ahead for when people are listening the next day. So
unfortunately, Anthony, I think if you're listening tomorrow, those numbers might be the same too. I mean, the direction things seem to be headed. Yes,
they could be higher. Probably based on recent trends. Yeah. And so, the fact that the NBA is just kind of saying, look, we have to make our money, and they're going to try to plow ahead here. How, we've seen the NFL deal with a lot of this. We saw baseball have their own flare-ups. We saw college football has been a freaking disaster to this point. What is it? 5 games in the Pac-12 are canceled tomorrow. That's 10 out of 12 teams that aren't able to play.
And it's the second week they've done this. Pac-12 has been in business for 2 weeks. Grand opening, grand closing. That's basically where we are.
So I do think that the NBA, I do have to lend them the benefit of the doubt because of how successful the bubble was. But this is a completely different idea of what a season is going to look like. So, maybe they pull it off. Maybe they're banking on a vaccine coming sometime soon, or rapid testing, the way the Golden State Warriors think that there's going to be rapid testing.
Yeah, that piece that Ramona Shelburne wrote for ESPN that went up today. People should check it out. What the Warriors are trying to do in terms of creating a setup where they could have the building 50% full, which, putting aside the questions of whether they'd even be allowed to do that in California, it's pretty impressive what they're trying to do. And apparently, the science people that they've consulted have said, like, logistically, this is going to be difficult to do, but as a theoretical, the way they're trying to do it makes sense. So it'll be very interesting to see if they can actually do it, because I mean, the truth is this: as much as if the buildings open up, it's about NBA gate money and things like that. I mean, all of us are adults and we know what that's about. It's also about people's jobs, though, because if you can open up the building, people who actually work as vendors, work inside, these arenas, ushers, all of that, like, these are their jobs. And, if the buildings are empty, they don't work. So, I mean, there's a lot more to this than just the teams getting paid and the players getting paid. in terms of the enormity of what they're trying to do right now.
Yeah, I agree with everything you just said. That noted, the only excuse less plausible for something someone said today than Kuzma's "I'm just asking questions" was Joe Lacob's like, I'm just doing this because it's not about the money. I just want to help humanity move forward. Okay. It's all about the bigger.
That part, yeah. I mean that part's bullshit. But I didn't say that. That's Joe Lacob's bullshit. That's not what I said.
Joe Lacob's like, look, I just want to help people. Okay, like that's why we're going to be giving away these tickets to these games for free.
I swear, I'm just buying Mars just to see what happens.
Oh wait, we're charging for these tickets? I didn't know that. I thought we were just getting people in the building.
This is truly one of those examples where two things can be true at once.
Yeah. That's true. Like the dystopian nature of this season was on full display earlier this week. Jared Dudley was talking on the Lakers Nation podcast, and I had to pull this quote back up just to make sure that I had it right. But he said at one point that the Lakers may need to bring him back because guys are going to miss time throughout the year through resting, through whatever, potentially Corona. It's good to have vets towards the end of the bench that are able to help out. Potentially Corona as an aside is that really just sums up the NBA stance on this season.
I do wonder, baseball expanded had a different roster setup. I think football's got a different setup of how they can bring players back and forth. It wouldn't surprise me if ultimately, at the very least, they change the rules about G League, teams.
Well, they're already talking about that,
like who you can bring, how many players, because and then actually it to some degree makes the 28th pick next week a little bit more important. Like there could be more opening for a 28th pick to play on an elite team than there would be in a regular season. But I mean, coronavirus, there will be players who test positive. Other than, aside from a fair amount of guys have already, which in theory, confers some degree of immunity for at least a group of players. But guys are going to have to miss time. There will be teams that you see, like the Florida Marlins, and you get 6 players and you got to find players somewhere else. That's going to happen. There's no way you can get through a season like that without it.
Well, the NBA, even heading into the bubble, acknowledged that there might be some guys who come up and test positive over the course of that time. Now they got lucky, or by great design, they didn't have to deal with that, despite Lou Williams' best efforts. But at the end of the day, this is something that I'm sure the NBA, it's all about risk assessment, right? Mm-hmm. Just as easily as we can say there is enormous risk in playing a season without not in a bubble, there's also enormous financial risk, not just to the players, not just to the owners, not just to people directly affected by the league, but across the country. We're talking about millions of people that there is immense risk in not playing this season. And I think at the end of the day, call me a harsh or calloused or cynical capitalist, but I think
but what were you going to say?
We know what it looks like if they don't play a season. We don't know what it looks like if they try.
This is an interesting point that somebody was making, and I lost it in the chat, but they're talking about Rudy Gobert and how he got it and showed it wasn't a death sentence and blah 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 blah. And I get, and all these things, I do think we have to come up with a construction in this country where our binary choice isn't death or insignificance. There is room in between, and Gobert is actually a really good example of that, because he said when they started again, here it is, from Ahmad Yusuf 18, or Ahmed Yusuf, he said it was hard for him. His recovery, he didn't feel right for a while. And so if the NBA hadn't stopped and will be doing what they'd probably be doing this year, which is just replace Rudy Gobert with someone else and keep going as much as you can, Gobert might have missed a month and a half, or 2 months before he was able to play again, because this virus, which thankfully doesn't kill most people that get it, can make people sick to the point where their recovery is very difficult.
Yeah, so my wife's sister got COVID, and a few months after finally being negative, she's still dealing with a lot of serious effects from it. I mean, she's been having seizures at times. She's been dealing with like short-term memory loss. I mean, there's serious stuff involved with this, and there's a lot we don't know about the after effects.
And it's naive to think that it's not going to have an impact on the season. Like it is. It is just. I would love to see them try this this sort of divisional pod thing where essentially the bulk of the 72 games or half of them, whatever it would be against, the Kings, Suns, Warriors, Clippers. That's the rest. I got everyone right. Like, and that's basically your season. You play a little bit against the rest of the West, and you don't see the Eastern Conference at all. I think that would actually be really cool.
Yeah, it makes for great rivalries, right? Like the more you see a team, the more familiar you get with them, the more you wind up hating them by that last that last matchup. That's
and everything turns into like mini playoff series, and like you really get. I mean, for geeks like us who really just love watching the game, like seeing how coaches continually adjust against each other, like stuff like that is really like the finals. Seeing Vogel and Spoelstra, two really good coaches, making those type of adjustments over a series. I mean, that's really fun, and being able to see that regularly during the regular season, I think would be really cool.
And we could sell it to the league as like, hey, you get Clippers Lakers 7 times. Like, we know you can't get enough of this matchup. Like, you get it guaranteed. The Clippers don't have to make it out of the second round this time. Like, you get it no matter what.
Well, Warriors, Lakers. Think what happens if the Suns land CP.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that'd be a brutal sketch. Like, honestly, everybly may go
take it back. I don't want this regional thing. Now I think about it.
Go back to more Lakers Knicks.
Can we combine it just like the whole West Coast and be able to play a few games against the Blazers too?
Maybe the Lakers are, if they're not going to get to play in front of fans anyway, I don't see any reason they can't play their season against the Atlantic Division or like, maybe like just the Knicks. Like for winning the title, they get 20 games against the Knicks next year. That's their like home court advantage.
That would create incentives for teams to never tank. Like even if you're way out, just the opportunity to get into the playoffs in the following year, you get 20 games against the Knicks. That'll keep everybody interested until the very end.
That's better than a ring itself.
Scheduling generally, just like sweeteners like that. You spin a wheel, you get some sort of sweetener.
Isn't the incentive not to tank basically like not having your fans wake up terrified about the idea that your team just traded for Russell Westbrook? Isn't that enough?
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, Anthony, because I mean, I've never seen, like, we live in very fractured times. I'm not sure if anybody's noticed. There was an election that was very polarizing.
What?
Yes, that libertarian candidate really.
It was Pete.
Pete, blink 3 times if the Lakers are making a trade. Do you think there's ever been a moment of unity across, at the very least, basketball Twitter, when the report came out that the Knicks were interested in Russell Westbrook, in terms of everyone at the same time praying that would happen? Like, because I don't think there has been a moment like that ever.
No, the funniest part to me was that all the Knicks fans were like, don't you say that Knicks fans are asking for this. Like, we are not asking for this. Like, you are connecting us to this. And, and then you have like the 20 follower, like Knicks avatar people that are like, their avatar's Julius Randle. They're like, get Westbrook in here. We're going to win 40 games with him and Julius.
They play the same position.
Yeah.
Kind of do with this. I mean, it makes no sense for Westbrook. Like, in terms of what he would want at this stage of his career. I mean, he's going to end up signing off, I think, on anywhere he ends up going. I would think. I mean, just because he seems to me like somebody that I would not want to have around if he's really, really unhappy.
Oh, no, but I mean, you got to hate where you are to be like, Charlotte, let's do it.
Right, but like, yeah, exactly. But like, from the Knicks' perspective, I mean, I saw Sean Hyken point this out, and it's an interesting way of looking at it. This is one way to make Knicks Nets a thing. Like KD and Russ in New York going at each other their first year, like for both of them, first year actually playing. Like, I mean, because that stupid rivalry doesn't mean anything and nobody cares. This is one way to actually make it a thing. And I mean, I could see where the Knicks would just like the idea of having a star like Russ, although ironically the first year might come when they can't have anybody in the building anyway. But like, God, that feels like such purgatory for Russ. Like I really would.
No,
feel
it's a
bad.
terrible idea for the Knicks. I mean, for God's sakes.
Oh, it's an
doesn't-
awful idea for them. Which means
No,
Although,
I mean,
I
based
guess
on-
like if you're willing to absorb Westbrook, it's like whatever. I realize the Houston and people are still talking about like, well, what can the Rockets get back? Nothing. You get
Yeah.
nothing back for this.
You
It's
get
just
You're
not
we'll
not,
take
having
you're
it.
not
him on
sending
your
out an
team
asset
anymore.
with him.
Correct.
But the funny thing here about Russ is that there was that piece in The Athletic, right, where he was saying like he demands accountability. He's concerned about the amount of accountability that isn't there in Houston, specifically with James Harden. You know where you go and there's a ton of accountability around. It's with the New York Knicks.
Yeah,
That's
James
where you
Dolan
go.
is known for his culture of holding everyone in that building accountable except himself.
I forget where are they now? Like who's the coach and what's happening there?
Tibbs.
Tibbs.
Tibbs is
Oh,
the coach.
Tibbs
God.
and Leon
Oh
Rose.
I completely forgot about that.
Oh,
When did, I
man.
mean that I realized that didn't happen like 6 years ago, but doesn't that feel like that happened 6 years ago?
I mean,
It-
yeah, kind of. I had to think for a second to remember. I'm like, who is the coach of the Knicks now?
Actually, Russ might be the only guy who might be happy to play the Tibbs like 47 and a half minutes in a game type schedule, right?
He's
That's
like,
just
I can
more.
pad my stats for how long?
Yeah, I get to
Okay,
get how
when did
many
the Knicks
rebounds?
officially hire Tom Thibodeau?
Was it
What
before
was
the
the date?
bubble?
What was the date?
I think it did happen during the bubble.
During
I
the
actually
bubble.
think it
I want
did.
to say
So-
June.
July 3rd.
July 3rd is Anthony's guess.
I thought it happened during the bubble. I could be wrong. but
Andy, so what do you think?
they entered the bubble in mid-July. I'm going to say August 7th.
Okay.
Oh, did you want a year from me on that one?
If you want to throw one out there, Harrison.
I'm gonna guess like mid-June, June 15th.
The answer is July 30th. That was not that long ago.
Man, I was that close.
That was not that long ago. That's basically July. That's August 1st. It was like, what is that? Like 2.5 months ago or something? Like, that might as well have happened in 1814. Like, oh my God.
Yeah, man. I don't remember anything anymore. Like,
Like,
It's
I don't
time
know
for me
who's
to go back
coaching
to Silver
anywhere.
Screen
I forget players, like where they are. Like, if you were on one of these teams that didn't make it into the bubble and you're not one of the potential keeper guys on my fantasy team, I literally have no idea where you play. Like, none.
no, who he play for with Charles Barkley this year is going to be wild. Like, you know,
Yes.
yeah, he may
I'm
not
gonna
even
be
know
Russell
some of the players
Westbrook.
at this point.
Like,
Yeah,
Russell Westbrook is going to come up there. Charles is going to be like, who he play for?
that's how they decide where Russell Westbrook is going. It's just whatever team Charles Barkley guesses. that
Barkley
Russ
just
plays
gets
for,
to declare it.
gets the contract.
The
Like,
legal
that's
figure
it.
out the league will figure out the cap math.
Yeah,
Generally speaking, isn't like who he play for basically just Chuck trying to guess the Orlando Magic roster? Like, isn't that
Pretty much like that or Charlotte's roster. Like it's like all the obscure rosters, like
so
Charlotte.
all the Russ teams basically.
Yeah, I know.
Oh,
I
what a
actually he's
world.
been linked to Charlotte. Mitch Kupchak was asked about it and said that he couldn't. Said that he couldn't talk about another.
His response was,
Oh, should we have a
Hey,
Mitch
guys.
off?
hey guys.
Okay, I actually have the. Let me pull this up. I believe I have the direct quote.
Russell Westbrook is a
comment.
good player.
On
he was drafted originally.
No, it's
like
by
being
Mitch
John
the
and
Malkovich.
Pete
Thunder.
both can't comment until the trade is done. You know, like that. That's what organizational front offices do. Like,
I'm reading a quote right now from the Charlotte Observer, Rick Bonnell article. Okay, speaking generically, Kupchak didn't sound like
Evergreen tweet.
yes.
speaking generically is the
General Manager Mitch Kupchak wouldn't directly address whether he'd be interested in acquiring Russell Westbrook, but speaking generically, Kupchak didn't sound like trading for a veteran star was likely right now. Does it make sense to add a veteran player, big-time veteran player? At first glance, you might say no. I mean, like that. By the way,
And
that is
at
a
second glance,
really
also,
That is so
you might say,
good.
is
But
that
that
a
is
real
a-
quote?
yes, that is a real quote.
say no.
Does it make
Oh, my
sense to add a
goodness.
big-time veteran player? At first
know.
glance, you might say
Man,
no.
he really has like descended into self-parody. Like,
But-
I have respect for it.
But it is my job to research every opportunity. If it feels like something needs pursuing, I'd pursue it and bring the ownership. That's a damning assessment of your own roster, by the way. That's Mitch basically saying, yeah, this thing is a bit of a mess.
Is Mitch Kupchak the least likely person on the planet to refer to himself in the third person?
He's up there.
Mitch
maybe
Kupchak is not interested in making that trade right now. Hey guys,
he's definitely.
I just want to know like what his voicemail thing sounds like. You've reached.
It's a good voicemail, not a great voicemail.
Like when you're beat, it's going to be not too long, not too short.
I got this phone. I created this voicemail message.
You can leave a message. I'll try to get back to you in some amount of time. I'm not really sure which. It might be a day, might be a week.
Nothing lower than 30 seconds, nothing more than 45.
Yeah, I mean, I will say the Mitch Kupchak filibuster, which always began with a history of where the person was drafted and when they came in the league.
Yes, and the measurements and everything. You have reached Mitch Kupchak. I played at North Carolina. I was a 6'9" forward. And
good player, not a great player.
I went to Los Angeles. Won a championship.
One of the ways you can get a hold of me is leaving a message right here at the beat.
You can also call my office and leave a message.
Please fax me. I don't believe in email. It might be tampering.
Not active on social media.
I'll call back or I can text.
Like Mitch getting a Twitter account would be a truly like amazing. Like it would make Magic Johnson tweets look like insightful and hot takey. Like
I think Mitch actually controls Halsey's NBA account.
That's where he just lets out. That's where he lets it all go.
Halsey, I don't even like basketball. I don't know what this is. I just don't want to. He's like,
I'm not going to correct it though. It's whoever it is seems like they're having fun.
Yeah, Mitch on paper at least does not sound like he thinks Russell Westbrook makes much sense for his roster, which is totally correct.
This is the downside, guys, of making $40-something million a year. You do lose a little bit of career flexibility, as it turns out.
Oh wow, he's making that much? Whoa,
a lot of money.
I didn't realize he was making that much money.
I just loved the idea of
he's getting 3 Luol Dengs.
Still a better deal than Terry Rozier.
I can make the Mozgov mistake 4 times over. But
I think I could trade him for 4 Mozgovs.
As we've always said, funny trumps mean.
He is a great guy. Mitch is
a wonderful person.
Yeah.
All right. So is there anything? Oh, no, we don't need Mace. Our Mitch. First of all, Steve Mason learned his Mitch from us. So
yeah, this was actually something that the entire 710 radio station started doing after Brian and I started doing it.
Right.
Like we sort of originated Mitch voice.
Also, it's the radio. You guys can say that they just use pre-recordings of you guys when they do it. Like you can just claim credit for that. Nobody can prove them.
We had heard from a few people that Mitch was not a fan of Mitch voice. And we felt bad.
I wonder why.
We felt bad about doing it because, like we said, we really mean it. Mitch is a great guy. We both really liked it. We didn't feel bad enough to stop doing it.
No. And most of the time it was just, hey guys.
But he didn't like it from everything we heard.
No, but I don't think Rob liked necessarily all the riffing that he got off
I mean, I can't imagine that Rob
Pelinka stopped about 90% of it this year, which served both him and the Lakers well.
What was funny was this is the year that hyperbole would have been most warranted, but he really eased off finally because he was getting made fun of so much. I can't imagine that when he got hired, like he didn't do an interview for it seemed like several months, or at least when it leaked out that he was getting hired. It was a while. So Anthony and I remember on Locked On Lakers developed the character of nihilistic Rob Pelinka, which was just me saying really, really nihilistic things in a Chris Traeger voice from Parks and Rec. And so he so what I'm saying is you guys probably did not do the most offensive Los Angeles area GM impersonation.
That's
nothing I do literally matters. Nothing at all.
Those men are nihilists, Donnie.
That's funny.
All right. Is there anything we didn't cover that you guys want to get to real quick before we're done here? I mean, we've already kept you over.
I just hope we keep Westbrook on the Rust Belt. That's all I'm hoping for.
Maybe they should trade him for Chris Paul. Like, I don't know. It seems like two teams with bad contracts they don't want. They could try and get out of it. Like,
can we all come into agreement that the funniest thing to happen is Paul George for Russell Westbrook? Like, that's the funniest outcome.
By far the funniest outcome.
That would be hilarious.
Amazing.
And then if it doesn't work out and Kawhi leaves, the Clippers end up with 2 more years of Russell Westbrook and no assets for like the next 10 years.
Anthony, if they do that deal, like, we're going to have to record LMFAO Clippers 2 on Locked On Lakers, like just the sequel to the original podcast with Pete.
To this day, like, far and away the most popular thing I have ever done was just us laughing at the Clippers. And I don't think that would touch as funny a moment as them trading for Russ would be. Like, that's not even close.
No, absolutely not.
Yeah, that would.
And then like Lawrence Frank will inexplicably win Executive of the Year again.
No salt there. Wow.
Nope. He is nihilist Rob Pelinka. Like, what did you expect?
No, he did a great job giving up more first rounders for Marcus Morris and Paul George than Rob did for AD. Like, it was a masterclass in asset management.
At the
fact
time,
that the other guy got second for the trade that you won the award.
You have to add, in fairness to you do have to add, anytime you talk about the Paul George trade, you're essentially, it's Paul George and Kawhi Leonard.
Okay, I understand that, but that's not as funny. So
funny trumps accurate.
Yes,
exactly. Yeah, jokes over facts all day.
All right, he is the host of the Locked On Lakers podcast, which is comes out 4 times a day. It's like the old newspaper. At the morning
David
edition,
Locke kicks his door down.
The afternoon edition and the evening edition. It's just a constant. It's basically Anthony Irwin on a live stream. That's 3 or 4 times a day, and then of course the editor-in-chief over there at Silver Screening Roll, Harrison Faigen. Guys, this was fun.
Yeah, this was a lot of fun, guys.
Yeah, anytime. This was an absolute blast.
Yeah, we appreciate it, especially Anthony. You're staying up a little bit later in Texas, so very, very much appreciated from both of you guys. Thank you.
Next week, we got some fun stuff. Chris Hare is going to join us. There's a second football team, we've been told, in Los Angeles. We're going to confirm that before Monday's show, but Chris Hare apparently covers them. So we'll talk about that. Tuesday is Travis Rogers from 710 ESPN. Wednesday is draft night. We're going to have a Land Lakers live crossover thing. That'll be a lot of fun. Thursday, Lindsay Theory, and Friday is Mo Dakhil from all over the place, Bleacher Report and The Athletic. So a lot next week. A lot.
Real quick, Sector's asking you, Anthony, is Avery asleep right now?
I have no idea. I'm going to find out as soon as I exit this room.
That's rock solid parenting right there.
It's like 1 a.m. in Texas. I don't know if my daughter's asleep.
It doesn't. Here's the deal, Harrison. You don't know. What matters is, are they where you left them?
Exactly.
I'm assuming he doesn't know that either. If he doesn't know if she's asleep or not, like,
Anthony's only a bad father if Avery is not where Avery is supposed to be.
Avery's down the street, like then he becomes.
We're okay.
Okay, all right, we're good.
You're solid,
Big brother.
Yeah.
Ooh,
yeah.
This would have been an all-time moment if she was like up shaking her crib thing when you like held that up.
No,
she does this thing where, like, if she gets angry enough when she's awake, she'll like actually chew on her crib. So like, there was a chance that we would have like gone to that video and she'd just been like,
her first word was Attica. The great moment in late night happy hour would have been if the baby wasn't there
and Anthony just runs out of the room.
I gotta go. So, all right, guys, we'll do this again another time. Thank you very much for sticking around a little longer, and we'll see everybody Monday. Have a great weekend.
Danke, Niederland.